Keith is sitting in his one-bedroom apartment on a Tuesday morning, reheating leftover pasta from 2 nights ago. No one across the table, no one asking what the plan is for the day. Just him, a $500,000 portfolio, and a Social Security check that covers about half his bills. 6 miles away, Gene and Vivian are splitting a grocery run. 2 carts worth of food, 2 cars to insure, 2 bodies to keep healthy. But also 2 Social Security checks hitting the same bank account, same $500,000 sitting in their retirement fund, same town, same cost of living index. Here's the thing most retirement calculators won't show you. When you run these 2 scenarios forward, same starting money, same region, same year, the gap by year 15 isn't small. It's not a rounding error. It's the difference between running out of money at 79 and still having a cushion at 85. And the part that surprises people, the side most assume has the advantage, doesn't. At least, not in the way they think. There's a specific variable, not income, not spending habits, not even healthcare, that determines which side wins. And it has nothing to do with whether you're married. If you're within 5 years of retirement right now, and you've got somewhere around $500,000 saved, this one's personal. Because the side that starts losing this race finishes with nearly double. And the reason isn't what you think. But for this comparison to mean anything, we need to level the playing field completely. And I mean completely. Let's set the rules. Keith, 64, single, retired after 28 years as a quality control manager in pharmaceuticals. He's got $500,000 in a traditional IRA. He claims Social Security at 65. His monthly benefit, roughly $2,200. Gene and Vivian, both 65, married 38 years. He managed operations. She taught high school. Same $500,000 in combined retirement savings. Gene's Social Security, about $2,100 a month. Vivian's, about $1,750. Combined, $3,850 hitting their account every month. Both sides use a 4% initial withdrawal rate. That's $20,000 a year pulled from the portfolio. Invested in a balanced 60-40 stock bond allocation. Same expense ratio, same rebalancing schedule. Same state, same county, same average property tax rate. Keith rents a modest 1-bedroom. Gene and Vivian own their home outright mortgage paid off 3 years ago. 1 person, 2 people, identical money. Let's see what happens. The playing field is level. Every difference from here is structural. And year 1 starts right away with one side already feeling like it's winning. Let's start with income. Gene and Vivian pull in $3,850 a month from Social Security alone. That's $46,200 a year before they touch a single dollar of savings. Keith, he gets $2,200 a month. That's $26,400. The Social Security gap alone is $19,800 per year. Almost the entire amount both sides are withdrawing from their portfolios. Think about that for a second. The couple gets nearly an extra $20,000 a year in guaranteed income. Before investments, before withdrawals, before anything. Now layer on housing. Gene and Vivian own their home, no mortgage. Their housing cost is property tax, insurance, and maintenance. Call it $7,200 a year. Keith rents a modest 1-bedroom in the same area, runs him $14,400 a year. Double. And rent doesn't care that he's retired. It goes up every year, whether he likes it or not. Groceries? Keith spends roughly $5,200 a year feeding himself. Gene and Vivian spend about $8,600 feeding too. That's not double. It's about 65% more economies of scale. 1 fridge, 1 stove. Bulk buying, 2 people eating for less than twice the cost of 1. Taxes? Here's where it gets interesting. The standard deduction for a single filer in 2025 is $15,350. For married filing jointly, $30,700. Gene and Vivian shelter twice the income before paying a cent in federal tax, and because their brackets are wider, they pay a lower effective rate on what is taxable. The tax code in this case is literally designed to favor them. By the end of year 3, Gene and Vivian have withdrawn about $60,000 from their portfolio. Keith has withdrawn the same $60,000. But here's the difference. Gene and Vivian didn't need all of it. Their Social Security covered more of their expenses. They banked some of those withdrawals. Keith needed every dollar. So the couple's portfolio sits at roughly $468,000 after 3 years, assuming modest market returns. Keith sits closer to $445,000. That's a $23,000 gap in just 3 years. Without Gene and Vivian doing a single thing differently, the math just favors them. So if that's the case, if the numbers tilt this hard toward couples from day one, why would anyone even consider retiring single on $500,000? Because these numbers don't include the thing that actually consumes retirement wealth. And it's not spending, it's not taxes, it's the cost that doubles when there are two of you, and it shows up right around year 5. Let's talk about what really eats a retirement portfolio: healthcare. If there's one cost that separates the retirement math of singles from couples, this is it, and most people dramatically underestimate the difference. According to Fidelity's annual retiree healthcare cost estimate, a single person retiring at 65 will need approximately $165,000 over their remaining lifetime just for healthcare premiums, copays, prescriptions, and out-of-pocket costs not covered by Medicare. That's one person. Couple, $330,000, exactly double. No economy of scale, no group discount, no 2-for-1 deal, 2 bodies, 2 full price tags, $330,000 versus $165,000. That $165,000 difference doesn't show up in year 1. It accumulates year after year, drip by drip. It pulls the couple's portfolio down at a rate that their Social Security advantage can't always offset. Keith pays 1 Medicare Part B premium, 1 Part D plan, 1 supplemental policy. Gene and Vivian pay all of that times 2. In 2025, the standard Part B premium is $185 per month per person. For the couple, that's $370 a month, $4,440 a year just in Part B. Keith pays $2,220. Now add prescriptions. The average retiree fills between 4 and 5 prescriptions per month. Multiply that by 2 for the couple. Add dental Medicare doesn't cover it. Vision Medicare doesn't cover most of it. 2 sets of eyes, 2 sets of teeth, 2 bodies aging on 2 different timelines with 2 different lists of things that can go wrong. And here's the cost nobody models: long-term care. The probability that at least one person in a married couple will need some form of extended care, assisted living, nursing home, or in-home aid is dramatically higher than for a single individual. Not because married people are less healthy, simply because there are 2 chances for something to go wrong instead of 1. 2 rolls of the dice instead of 1. The median annual cost of assisted living in the United States is roughly $64,000. A semi-private room in a nursing facility, closer to $104,000 per year for one person. If Gene needs 2 years of assisted living, that's $128,000 gone from the same $500,000 portfolio. That's also funding Vivian's daily life. Keith faces the same risk individually, but if it hits, it only hits once. There's no second person depending on what's left. Think about that. The couple carries double the probability of a catastrophic long-term care event funded from the same single pool of money. Now let's talk about the silent tax, inflation. When prices rise 3%, Keith's grocery bill goes up by about $156 a year. Gene and Vivian's, about $258. Keith's utility bill inflates once. Theirs inflates once, but the baseline is higher. Every single inflating cost in their budget sits on a wider base because there are 2 people consuming, 2 people eating, 2 people needing heat in the winter and air conditioning in the summer. The couple's Social Security advantage is real, but healthcare for 2, long-term care risk for 2, and inflation on a 2-person budget create a structural drag that compounds every single year. Not some years, every year. And here's the part that changes everything. These forces don't just add up, they compound. So let's run the clock forward and see what the portfolio actually looks like at year 5, 10, 15, and 20. This is where the lines on the chart start to cross. Year 5. Keith's portfolio has dropped to roughly $410,000. His withdrawals are steady. His Social Security covers a significant chunk of his expenses. His healthcare costs are manageable: 1 person, 1 premium, 1 set of prescriptions. Inflation has nudged his spending up, but the increases are linear, not exponential. Gene and Vivian, they're at about $420,000, still ahead. But the cushion is thinner than it was in year 3. Their healthcare spending has accelerated. 2 prescription plans adjusted upward. A dental procedure for Vivian that ran $4,800 out of pocket. An ER visit for Gene that cost $2,300 after Medicare. The gap is now $10,000. It was $23,000 2 years ago, already cut in half, and nothing unusual happened. No crisis, no bad luck. Just 2 people getting older at the same time. Year 7, Gene starts having trouble with his knee, physical therapy, cortisone shots, and eventual replacement surgery, out of pocket $6,500 over 18 months. Vivian's blood pressure medication changes, the new one costs more. Again, these aren't catastrophic expenses. They're normal. They're expected. They happen to almost everyone eventually, but they only happen to couples at twice the rate. Keith, meanwhile, gets his knee checked too. Same physical therapy, same ice packs, same frustration, but there's only one knee in his budget, one body, one timeline. By year 10, Keith's portfolio sits at approximately $340,000. Gene and Vivian's, about $325,000. Read that again. The couple, the side with $19,800 more in annual Social Security, the side with lower housing costs, the side with a wider tax bracket is now behind. How? Because their structural costs are relentless. 2 healthcare timelines, 2 inflation-adjusted consumption streams, 2 aging bodies drawing from one pool. The advantages they had in year 1 didn't disappear. They just got outraced by costs that grow faster. Year 12. Vivian's mother needed care before she passed. Vivian knows the signs. She's seen what happens. She and Gene start pricing long-term care insurance. A joint policy for a 65-year-old couple with a 3-year benefit period and inflation protection, roughly $4,500 to $6,000 per year. That's money coming out of either the portfolio or their cash flow. Keith can get a single policy for about $2,400 to $3,200. Some couples skip the insurance. That's a bet. And if they lose it, the cost isn't $6,000 a year. It's $64,000 to $104,000 in a single year. That's not a line item. That's an earthquake. Year 15. Keith's portfolio, roughly $265,000. His withdrawal rate has crept up slightly with inflation adjustments, but his expenses remain structurally simple. 1 rent payment, 1 grocery bill, 1 Medicare premium, 1 body. Gene and Vivian, approximately $215,000, and this is the optimistic scenario. No major long-term care event, no extended hospitalization, no memory care, just the normal, predictable cost of 2 people aging simultaneously on a fixed portfolio. The crossover happened around year 9. By year 15, Keith is $50,000 ahead, not because he earned more, not because he spent less per person, but because his cost structure scales linearly with 1 life, while theirs scales with 2. Year 20, Keith. Now 84 has approximately $155,000 remaining. His Social Security, adjusted for cost of living increases, covers more of his expenses than it did at 65. His portfolio is a safety net, not a lifeline. He's not rich, but he's stable. Gene and Vivian, now 85, are looking at roughly $70,000. If both are still healthy, they can make it work tightly. But 1 significant health event, 1 fall, 1 diagnosis, 1 need for in-home care, and that $70,000 doesn't last 18 months. And here's the thing Keith doesn't have that Gene and Vivian do, a backup caregiver. If Keith falls, there's no one in the next room, no one to call the ambulance, no one to handle the insurance paperwork. That's real, that matters, and it costs money to solve money. Keith hasn't had to spend yet, but might. Before we call this, Keith has a vulnerability that no spreadsheet captures. Let's be honest about what Keith doesn't have. He doesn't have someone to drive him to the ER at 2 a.m. He doesn't have a second pair of eyes on a confusing Medicare statement. He doesn't have someone to notice that he's repeating the same story, or forgetting to eat, or leaving the stove on. These aren't spreadsheet items, but they become dollar items faster than most people realize. The average cost of a home health aide in the United States is roughly $33 per hour. If Keith needs just 10 hours a week of help, not full-time care, just someone to check in, handle errands, manage medications, That's $17,160 a year. Gene and Vivian provide that to each other for free. No invoice, no scheduling, just presence. $17,160 per year in informal caregiving value. That's what a spouse is worth in pure economic terms when health starts to decline. You can't put that on a balance sheet, but you absolutely feel it when it's missing. There's also the decision-making gap. Retirees who manage money alone are statistically more vulnerable to financial fraud. No second voice saying, "That doesn't sound right." No one questioning the too-good-to-be-true investment pitch. No one noticing the unusual withdrawal. Isolation increases risk, both medical and financial. And there are specific conditions where the couple wins clearly. If both Gene and Vivian stay healthy through their 70s, if they downsize the house and unlock home equity, if one of them qualifies for a spousal or survivor Social Security benefit that boosts their income floor, if they coordinate Roth conversions across 2 lower income years, under those conditions, the couple's Social Security advantage holds, their housing equity becomes a reserve fund, and their combined tax strategy creates breathing room that Keith simply doesn't have. Keith's cost structure is simpler, but his risk profile is lonelier. The couple pays more, but they also have a built-in safety net that doesn't show up on a balance sheet. So who actually wins with $500,000? The answer depends on something no spreadsheet captures. Here's what the math actually says. If you're single with $500,000, your advantage is structural simplicity. One healthcare timeline, one consumption stream, one inflation curve. Every dollar in your portfolio serves one life. And that efficiency compounds over 20 years in ways that surprise people, including financial advisors who assume couples always have the edge. If you're a couple with $500,000, your advantage is Social Security depth and built-in caregiving. 2 checks, 1 household, someone to share the load financially and physically. But your disadvantage is that every health risk, every inflation adjustment, every surprise expense multiplies by 2, and it all draws from the same pool. The single retiree's portfolio survived 20 years in our projection. The couple's was on life support by year 20. But, and this matters, the couple's quality of life in years 1 through 12 was arguably higher. More income, more security, more companionship, more of the things that don't show up on a spreadsheet but show up in how you feel on a Wednesday afternoon. The portfolio tells one story, the lived experience tells another. And the variable that actually determines the outcome, it's not marital status, it's healthcare timing. The side that avoids a major long-term care event before 75 wins, single or married. 1 stroke, 1 hip fracture, 1 dementia diagnosis. That single event reshapes everything. Not love, not loneliness, not even spending discipline, healthcare timing. A single long-term care event costing $104,000 in a nursing facility wipes out roughly 20% of the original $500,000. For Keith, that's a crisis. For Gene and Vivian, it's a crisis that also leaves the surviving spouse underfunded for the rest of their life. Neither side wins. The question is which risks you're equipped to absorb. So, what does this mean for you? Here's what we covered. Same $500,000, same region, same starting age. Keith single ends up with roughly $155,000 after 20 years. Gene and Vivian married end up with roughly $70,000. The couple started stronger, the single retiree finished stronger, and neither of them made a single financial mistake. The difference wasn't behavior, it was structure. 1 life versus 2. 1 healthcare bill versus 2. 1 body aging versus 2 bodies aging on different timelines from the same account. If you're single heading into retirement, your biggest asset isn't your portfolio, it's your cost efficiency. Protect it by building a support network that replaces the one thing couples get for free, someone watching your back. If you're a couple, your biggest asset isn't your combined Social Security, it's your ability to coordinate tax strategy, healthcare decisions, housing timing. The couples who thrive on $500,000 are the ones who treat retirement like a joint operation, not 2 people sharing a bank account. And if you're sitting there wondering whether $500,000 is even enough for either scenario, the honest answer is, it depends on the next question. What happens when that number is $750,000? Does the couple's disadvantage disappear? Does Keith's efficiency still compound? The math shifts in ways you wouldn't expect, and I'll break it down in the next video. If that's a question you need answered, subscribe, because this stuff only works when you see the full picture. The only number that matters is the one that includes everything, not just the portfolio, not just Social Security, everything. Which version are you planning for?